Hey, it's Tim. This is Komposer, and in this video I'm going to show you Beats, Komposer's drum pattern generating tool. We'll break the video into three parts. Firstly, we'll generate some drum patterns using Beats and its editable Euclidean sequencing mode, and we'll send those patterns into Roicemaker. In the second example, we'll use Beats built-in patterns to trigger a drum computer, and then thirdly, instead of using Beats to generate drum patterns, we'll use Beats to trigger drum patterns in drum computer and Scarkia. So let's get started with Roicemaker. Firstly, I'll bring up an instance of Beats, and in the menu we have a MIDI out, and I want to set all my MIDI out channels to channel 1 because that's what Roicemaker is set to receive from. It's set up to receive beats and control on channel 1. Next, in the note set type, which determines the available notes that you can send from Beats, we'll choose a fixed note set, and with the options we've got different programs, and I'm going to set it to the Roicemaker default. So now we can come back to the steps mode, which is where we can generate editable Euclidean sequences. So by that I mean I can choose a channel, and Beats has 4 channels, each of which can send different note, CC and velocity information. So we'll start on channel 1, and then I can tap in a pattern like so, or I can generate notes by turning the second knob to notes and then generate different number of notes in the pattern with the value knob. So let's just say we want to have 4 beats. Then I can change to channel 2 and generate, let's say, 2 notes. But these 2 notes are not where I want them. On channel 1 I'm sending 4 notes over the 16 steps to C sharp 3, which is note number 49, and that goes to the bass drum in Roicemaker. If I switch to channel 2, you can see I'm sending F sharp 3, which is note number 54. So I've got 2 notes here. I can dial in as many as I want, but if I move this dial here to rot or rotation, I can now move these through the sequence to the point where I want them. Okay, so let's move to channel 3, and you'll notice that these note values are preset, and I'm also sending a velocity of 100. So channel 3, let's generate, let's go back to notes and generate, say 5 notes in this time, and not quite where I want it. So let's rotate that a little bit, and that's pretty loud, so we'll just turn that one down a bit. So now channel 4, I can also generate some notes, and I can some notes and rotate them to where I want them to be. Once I've got notes generated that I like, I can also come in and just tap them on or off. So I can build up a pattern this way, and then if I come to the scenes pattern menu, you can see that I've got a scene here with 4 bars, and I've got a 1 bar pattern. And if I want to repeat that pattern a number of times, I can just turn up the duration here to 3 bars, say, and then what I can do is let's go shift, copy paste pattern, and stick that in there, and now I have a second pattern. We'll turn the duration down to 1, so now I have 3 bars of this pattern and 1 bar of this pattern, but at the moment they're the same. So I can come back to the steps, and we're currently on pattern 2. Come back to steps, and let's go to channel 1, and let's increase the number of notes here, and let's have a listen. Okay, and maybe on channel 2 we can have a couple of extra notes in there, and channel 3. Okay, so, and channel 4 for good measure. Okay, so we're just looping this second pattern now. If we come back to scenes and click scene 1, we'll now play the whole song rather than being locked to the whole scene, rather than being locked to one pattern. 2, 3. Okay, so now we've got a variation on the fourth bar. Okay, so that's not bad. Now, as well as setting up patterns, we can also use control to control Voicemaker. So if we bring this up here, and we go to all channels and drums, and we've got the Voicemaker template in here. So I'm going to go to page 2, and if I click this hi-hat here, and select the green one, which is the 5th pad, here I can, with my MIDI controller, now adjust the decay. So let's turn that down, and that sounds pretty good. So you've got 4 pages of controls here that you can use to change parameters in Voicemaker, and you can do it with your MIDI controller if you've got a map to control. So we've got that hi-hat now with a shorter decay. Let's come in here to the edit mode, and in the edit mode we can edit each step by selecting it. So let's come to this percussion tom sound here, and let's change this note here to F#4. Not bad. Okay, so we've got a different sound playing, but it's in the same pattern. So from here we can adjust the note, we can adjust velocity, so if we want it a bit louder on this one and a bit quieter on this one. We can do that, and you can also send out per step a CC value. So coming back to control, as I mentioned and showed you, we can adjust the decay value here, and each one of these controls is connected via a CC value on channel 1, and I can see by clicking on it that the decay is set up on channel 1 CC63. So if we come back to the menu item and on our CC vals here, for channel 3, because that's the one that's sending out our hi-hats, we can select a value of 63. So now what will happen is that we can come here and let's increase these values, and back here we'll bring it back down low. And so we're automating per step, parameter locks if you want to call it that, the decay value on the hi-hat. And if we come back to our scenes, and we could do something similar in here, CC value, when we make this fill pattern kind of quite noisy. Pattern 1. So you can set up to 8 patterns per scene, and you can have up to 8 scenes. That should be plenty to build a drum track. Let's move on to the next example. Okay, so I have now a drum computer channel set up, and in the menu for beats I'm going to change the node set type to drum computer. And now, instead of going into steps to generate a pattern like we did previously, I'm going to go to sequence generation, and here we have 4 knobs where we can use the knobs to generate different built-in patterns. And we have a channel knob to select the different channels 1 through 4, and then we have a knob for setting kick patterns, snare patterns, hi-hat patterns, perk patterns, velocity patterns, ramps, and CC ramps. And the generate knob will generate whatever you have selected here. So then lastly there's set range, and we can set a minimum and a maximum, and then when we generate velocity patterns, it will generate it within the minimum and the maximum range. So we're on channel 1, we want a kick pattern. Let's just generate something and press play. Okay, and we'll just show you some of the other patterns that are in here. The first half are more house orientated, and then they get more broken beat as you go through. And there's 30 or so patterns in each one, so there's quite a lot of combinations, 5,000 or something you can generate. Okay, quite like this one. Let's move to channel 2 and generate. It's already set to snare. I'll generate something else. And you'll see that it also generates at different velocities. This note here is at a velocity of 64, whilst this is at velocity of 127. channel 3 and we'll generate some hi-hat patterns. So there's standard stock patterns built in, and then some ones with a little bit more variation. You can hear that they all sound like hi-hat patterns, not just completely random stuff. Okay, and let's go to channel 4 and we'll generate a percussion pattern. Okay, now if we come out of there and go into the edit mode, we can change the note. And let's bring the velocity down on some of these. Okay, so that's how you kind of generate patterns using the built-in patterns of beats. Let's have a look at another feature where we can add some mutation in. So I have channel 4 here selected. I can select any channel, and now I can add in some random velocity. So we'll turn up some velocity, and we should hear velocity being randomized within the range of plus and minus 21. A little bit hard to hear exactly what's going on there, but if we turn it up, we might hear some quieter beats, and maybe a clearer example would be using mutation of step. So we can now dial in, for example, here we've got a 30% chance that a step will be added. So every time the pattern repeats, there's a 30% chance that it will add in a single step. So let's turn the percentage up a little bit higher. And the purple step is the mutated step. Sometimes it's adding on existing steps. And if we go past the center, we can have a chance that it will add or subtract a step. So if this is a step there, it may remove it. So let's put that up to 100%. And now we can have our steps added and subtracted randomly. Let's come back to the hi-hats and add in some velocity randomization. If we come back to the sequence gen and choose a busier pattern, we get some randomization in there. So probably want to edit the volume of that. So let's just got my drum computer template set up here, and switch to just turn the volume down a fraction on that and solo the channel. Okay, so that's pretty cool. One last thing is possible to reverse a pattern. So if we have a pattern here for channel 4 and we click scene 1, pattern 1, channel 4, reverse, and we can see that the pattern has been reversed. Click reverse again and it's back over here. So that's another thing that you can do to spice up your patterns. Let's move on to the next example. In this example I have an instance of Drum Computer and an instance of Scarkia set up on channels 1 and 2 respectively. I've changed the note set from Drum Computer note to Drum Computer pattern so I can trigger patterns within Drum Computer, and I've changed the MIDI channels from channel 1 on channels 3 and 4 to sending out MIDI on channel 2, which is where Scarkia is. So in my Drum Computer, in my Beats instance, the first 2 channels will go to Drum Computer and the second 2 will go to Scarkia. Coming back to the steps page, I've also got my 4 channels here, and I've changed the rate from 16th notes up to whole bars. So that'll be the step rate. I can change the length of a clip as well, but in this case we're just going to leave the length as is and set the step rate to whole bars. If I put in a C-sharp 1, -1 on here and a C1 on here and press play, we get my first pattern played for the first bar, and the second pattern played for the second bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this pattern for the first 4 bars, and then I'm going to switch to pattern D, and then we'll go to pattern D sharp. We'll put in a variation pattern here, and then we'll go back to the pattern on D sharp, and let's put in a fill pattern here as well. So now if we press play, we're playing 4 bars of just kick and snare. Okay, so over 16 bars I'm triggering these different patterns. Now if I go to channel 2, I've set this up to go directly into Effectrix, and even though it's on channel 1, I've set some note range limits so that anything above C5 is ignored by Drum Computer, and in Effectrix it ignores anything below C5. So that way I can use notes in octave C5 to go to Effectrix but not to Drum Computer. And I can trigger different patterns by playing these different notes. So C5 will turn it off, C#5 will trigger a pattern. So let's play through our pattern again, and let's put in an Effectrix fill on these every 4th bar, and like so. Okay, whoops, just got to remember to turn it back to the empty pattern, otherwise once it's started on that pattern it will continue. So let's try that again. I'll just shrink this down. Should be able to see. Okay, so I've got some crazy fills in there. Maybe we'll just do without those for the moment. And let's move on to channel 3, where I've set this up to go to MIDI channel 2, which just means it's going to trigger Scarkia. So if we come in here, you can use any octave, and I've got a shaker pattern on C, a variation on C sharp, an egg on F, and a variation with F sharp. I'm not even going to try and pronounce what that says. So coming back here, we can trigger these like so, and here let's just put these in on every bar, and on the 4th bar we'll change it to C sharp. Okay, that's pretty cool. Let's go to channel 4 and do something similar. I'll just put these steps in, and why don't we just variation, put something in here. Okay, so there you go. You can see that with one instance of beats, we're triggering a 16 bar sequence with multiple patterns in drum computer and multiple sounds in Scarkia. Hope that's given you a good overview of beats, and I'll see you in the next one.